Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to Social Silver Surfers 2013 Sneak Preview. We still see a number of people are signing in, so we're going to give them just a few more moments to get in the room, and we certainly appreciate your being here on time. We will move expeditiously to make sure we finish on time, but just stand by for another 2 minutes or so as people continue to come in. Thank you. All right, we're going to get started. Once again, welcome to Social Silver Surfers 2013, the special preview. I'm Todd Harf, and we are very excited to be sharing our initial findings with you, our clients and partners. Today's attendees represent organizations from 13 states and a number of different industries. One thing that you all have in common is that you're all looking for ideas that can help your organization motivate mature consumers with your digital marketing initiatives. We're glad that you could join us, and we're confident that you're going to take away some new knowledge and insights that can help you. You can see I'm on the left. That's me before the recession when I had more hair. And on the right is Aaron Reed, who is our Director of Strategic Planning and has really been leading this research project, working on it for almost a year now, and has been gathering data from lots of different sources and analyzing it, and we're looking forward to showing it to you today.
We certainly are. I also have less hair right now, but I think it's because I've been pulling it out with trying to make sure that we get the best insights out of the data we've gathered. And really that's our agenda for today, is that we want to make sure we're sharing some new data and really relating those to insights that you can apply to your marketing programs. We're going to touch briefly on methodology, and then we'll hit the top points of this year's research, and we'll point to trends over time. A bit of digital housekeeping. During this session, your control panel is in the upper right of your screen, and Creating Results' wonderful Sally O'Donnell is actually helping us out today as our tech support. So raise your hand to get her attention if you have a tech issue. There's also a spot to ask some questions. We have a lot to cover, so we may not get to all the questions today, but please do ask them, and we'll follow up directly with you later. We have muted all the participants today just so that everybody can hear clearly. And finally, we're recording this session, so that way if you had team members who couldn't attend, just let us know after the webinar, and we'll see if we can hook you up with a copy of the recording.
So let me share a little bit about our motivations and methodology. There's a lot of existing research on websites and social media usage, so why did we decide to invest hundreds of hours in our own project? Because we wanted to know more about the type of mature consumers who we target for our clients. Unlike the general population, They tend to be older, wealthier, and more educated. The existing research really doesn't drill down to the level of detail that we need to be able to help you make the best informed decisions about how to invest your limited marketing resources. So how did we decide to go about it? Well, we talked to people who are both active users of the internet and those who would rather talk to a person than complete a survey. Most surveys on internet usage are online, so we thought that the offline intercept surveys were really important. We asked only 2 qualifying questions, which were, do they use a computer to go to the internet, and are you 40 or better? Based upon that information, we were really able to get a good group of respondents and analyze the information. First, taking a look at the respondents by age group. Here you can see a breakdown of different age bands, and it shows us that we have a nice sample group of all ages, from 40 to 75 plus. We also wanted to look at it by cohorts or generations. Here you can see how what a small segment the greatest generation is becoming, and how important the boomers are. Because the boomers are such a large group, we segment them into 2 cohorts, the leading, born 1946 to 1955, and the trailing, 1955 to 1964, because they really live in different worlds. Segmenting it by age bands and by generations allowed us to see how the preferences and usage has changed since 2010. And we can look at it comparing the same people and how they have changed, as well as how usage within certain cohorts or age bands have changed. Now let's take a look at some stats about their incomes. Here you can start to see what the overall U.S. population for people over 40, what their income breakdown is. As I said, we skewed older. So look how much wealthier our sample population is than the average American. The majority of our clients focus on people who are middle income or higher, so we found it much more relevant to know what they like and dislike about the internet and social media. So now we know that they've got more disposable income. But Erin, are they any smarter?
Well, here's the U.S. population over 40, and here are our respondents. And so since I'm based up in the New England office, as we would say in Boston, they're wicked smart. And we want to talk about what those smart people are doing when it comes to social media. Now, I'm starting with social media because social continues to dominate the headlines, even though we get wonderful quotes like these from our respondents of, I don't need it, it has nothing of value. It is a sign of the times. I'm also starting with social despite the fact that when prospects are asked, most of them say they don't get most of their information from social. And when they do surveys, they look at the impact of various channels, and once again, social does not have as great an impact on purchase as email or your sales team or websites do. Finally, we're starting with social because most surveys that reference social media and older people tend to overlook one critical point, and that is that while the United States has a significant number of older people, not all older people use the internet, and not all older users who are on the internet use social. So we can see that green stepping down for ages 65 plus. So I want to put that out there so we can kind of keep it in mind, have that context, but then drill down into those who are using it. How do they want to use it, and how can we use it better to communicate with them?
So we asked people about social networking, and they immediately think of Facebook. But there's much more than Facebook. That's why we started workshops and planning sessions for social media, reminding people that social is so much more than Facebook. On this chart, you can see how important social sharing tools are to mature consumers. We asked them about the most common social tools integrated into websites, and they told us that the 2 most popular with all ages are the same as we reported in 2010, good old email and YouTube. However, we did see that user reviews and comments are 2 features which have become more appreciated by all ages, slightly more by men than women, report reading or contributing to blogs. So what isn't that popular with social Silver Surfers? Well, here are the 4 least popular social sharing tools. Our advice is that while Instagram may be popular with your children and you, it's probably not a place to invest a lot of time and money for the mature consumer. We then sliced the preferences by age bands to see if there are any differences in social media usage, and yes, there are. So here you can see as they come in how they change. The youngest age group was most fond of comments. They also had a strong preference for user reviews and message boards, as you'll see on the next slide. Our oldest olds are using all tools less frequently, but there's still ones that they prefer. Notice how much more important good old email is than any other tool for that 75-plus sample. Now, if you're targeting people at the other end of the age range, here are 3 social sharing tools that appears that you could forget. We were really surprised by blogs, and we want to caution you. Many of the respondents we spoke with said that they didn't read blogs, and then, upon further discussion, revealed that they really didn't know that they were reading a blog. They just thought that they were reading news, and they love news. So even though data doesn't seem to support it, we believe that content-rich blogs are increasingly valuable for many, many reasons. So here are some key action items for you. If you're targeting boomers, you really want to make sure that you're incorporating video. You've got the ability to easily share links by email, and user reviews, as we saw, are becoming more and more appreciated. If you're targeting the silent and greatest generation, make sure that you've got content that they want to share, and they're going to share it via email more than anything else. And they want to also have it be easy and secure for them to do. You'll find out later that they still have some significant privacy concerns. So now that we know what social surfers like to do socially, Erin, can you share how frequently they use social networking?
Absolutely. What we've seen is that social networking activity has gone up among all ages in the past 3 years. And this finding is in line with other national studies. When we looked at our respondents specifically and asked who was using it at a level of very actively involved, you can see that the folks who are using it most frequently are those who are in the youngest cohort and also our leading edge baby boomers, 55 to 64 range. That pretty much aligns with them. Then we get on the folks who are using it moderately, and we see that there's a nice growth in overall participation. Going to those who use it just a little, now we see that those are more heavily weighted to our older olds, 65, 75 plus are more likely to be a moderate user than to just a little user than to be a moderate user. For the never tried it, once again, our older olds are the ones most likely to say that they have never tried an online social network. And finally, tried it and quit, you can see where the frustration levels go. Our youngest cohort of 40 to 44-year-olds, Gen Xers, were not responding at all that they had tried it and quit. But you can see that for the older generation, that was definitely an option for them. So we always like to kind of get a good picture of who's behind these numbers. And here's one example. This is a woman who's never tried social networks. Now, that's not to say she's not digitally savvy. She uses email to stay connected, and she shares photos digitally with her family. And even though she had no plans to join a social network, she did wonder something out loud to us, which I thought was very insightful. She said, what are we missing? We're probably missing a part of our children's lives, and that's why we ought not to be left behind. Yet even though she has a little bit of anxiety, she still doesn't see the relevance or the impetus to move forward and take the plunge. For our Just a Little guys, here's a Just a Little user. He said he started using social because of his children and his grandchildren. And I asked him, well, how does he use social? And his answer was very, very infrequently and only when asked. He said it's just too time consuming. So these are some things to keep in mind about those groups.
Okay. So not everyone likes social. We asked the 5% of users that said that they had tried it and quit. Why? Well, here you can see their top reasons. too intrusive, too time-consuming, overexposure and oversharing. They were confusing to them. They're not really sure what they're doing or what they're supposed to be doing. They have safety and security issues. And for the first time, we started seeing commercialized. They were concerned about advertising and spam, and then 22% said all of the above. When you exclude all of the above and combine intrusive, overexposure, and safety and security, these privacy-oriented reasons account for 56% of all social dropouts. We then looked at the 15% of all respondents who said that they had never tried social media. We asked them, well, what would motivate you to do so? And here are their responses. It was interesting to note that just as in 2010, a significant number said nothing at all. Take a look at those numbers. Generally around 50 to 68%. Nothing at all could motivate them. You can also see the importance of privacy to more people over 55. And please note that older people are still looking for more time. So much for dreaming of that stress-free retirement. I also want to draw your attention to that 45 to 54-year-old group. And they're being the most time-starved. This lines up with prior research and reflects that these are the people typically juggling children, parents, peaking careers, and often divorce. When we first did this study in 2010, we discovered that the primary reason for trying online social networking was a person's offline social network. This really hasn't changed. It's primarily work-related. People wanting to keep up with the times or just keep their job. As a father of two wonderful and absolutely stress-free teenage girls, I thought it's interesting to see that friends are more influential with matures as well as teenage daughters. Now let's take a look at how the reasons for using social media have changed since 2010. And we saw some significant changes. In the 3 years since we did it, work and career have decreased as a motivator on all age groups except for leading edge boomers. You can see here that family is also becoming less important, which was somewhat of a surprise, but friends invited them to join for the younger boomers and Gen X increased. And finally, you can see that the just curious rose from 6 to 11%. In a 3-year period, these are pretty significant changes. Taking a look at the leading edge boomers, you can see work and career grew, and that the family invited to join became somewhat less important, whereas the friends became less important, and the just curious increased. The just curious was one that's increased for all ages. Taking a look at our older groups, you can see clearly here a wider variety of motivations for trying social networks and greater changes over the last 3 years. For example, we want to tell you to never underestimate the power of an invitation. It really had a huge impact. In 2010, none of our silent generation folks reported that a friend's invitation had led to social networking. In 2013, 14% did. But the influence of family and invitations dropped significantly. For our oldest olds, those trying social out of curiosity went from 0 to 39%. That was a tremendous growth. But if you remember that these folks are well educated and well informed, they're hearing about social all the time from so many different places. So it makes sense that they want to check it out for themselves. They also see social networking as a way to connect with friends and expand an often shrinking world. So Erin, what action should our clients take based upon these findings?
As Todd said, I think it's really important to repeatedly extend that invitation. We need to ask our current social networks to invite their friends and their families to join the group. And when you're asking them to do so, you have to give them the reason for why. How will they benefit when they do? In addition, I think it's important to recognize that social networking should be a part of your HR efforts. Even if you're not currently paying attention to that right now, it is having an impact on how they perceive your organization and their desire to come work for you. So we want to make sure that we ask ourselves, is social media helping us? And how can we use the social networking more strategically? So this is a good way to apply the data that we've just gone through. So Todd noted earlier that we always start these off reminding people that social is not equivalent to Facebook. But I got to tell you, it's clear from our survey and from usage patterns that Facebook is the 800-pound gorilla. Ask any person over 40 to name any social network they're aware of, and it's Facebook. They name it first. They name it the most. I even had one woman tell me, oh, I don't know any social networks at all. Nope, none at all. And then she proceeded to tell me about how her granddaughter spent all her time on Facebook. So even that, in terms of unaided awareness, it's all about Facebook. If we also ask them which of the social networks they use, it's Facebook. And this, of course, is backed up by our national studies as well. So the reason we want to share this with you is that there's always going to be a new shiny platform coming along. When we're trying to make sure that we're getting to most of the people in the place that they're most comfortable and already spending the time, really Facebook should get the bulk of your attention. So then we went ahead and we said to them, okay, what is it that you like about social networking? What are the benefits that you see that you're getting from social networking as for those who are involved in it? And these were the aspects of social networking that are most favored by all age groups. Connecting with family and friends and the convenience and ease of contact. Again, that connecting with family and friends refers to what was their motivation originally, which was to get on there because a family member or a friend invited them to join. I really was excited to see the rise in the number of people over 75 who liked the convenience factor, because if something's convenient, we're going to use it more, and that gives us more opportunity to communicate with that oldest old. So here are some things that are most popular with our older respondents, and that was the idea of making new contacts and friends. And oh yes, that good old thing that I like about social networking, which is nothing at all. So keeping in mind, even when they're using it, they may not be using it entirely enthusiastically. And that's definitely truer the older you are. Again, looking at this by kind of our age bands, what was most popular with boomers? Well, photos, the work career benefits, and catching up with quote-unquote old friends. Now, as we saw earlier, 22% of our 45 to 54-year-olds and 27% of our 55 to 64-year-olds had come on to social networks for work and career reasons. So we're happy to see that they're finding the benefits. And I also, again, as our digital world becomes more visual, notice the importance of photos to our older boomers and our 75 plus.
I would think with that 75 plus, a lot of it is photos of their grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
So now we know what they like about it. What don't they like about social? When we asked people about this in 2010, the top 3 issues that they raised were time pressed, oversharing, and privacy. Well, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Our 2 oldest groups worry less about time involved, but they still don't like it. Once again, you can see those time-starved Gen X and younger boomers really complaining about the time-consuming nature of social media. Here's another frustration that we've seen explosive growth: oversharing and overexposure. This is particularly true for the silent generation. I think they got that name for a reason. To be honest, at first we were surprised that it was the youngest group that continues to be most peeved by oversharing. However, looking at my own networks, it does get a little overwhelming as they have grown in size. Now, when the oldest olds explain that they don't use social at all, that's their #1 complaint. Who cares that it's Sunday and you're doing the laundry? So it appears that this perception of oversharing keeps matures off of social networks. But once they get on, their concerns shift because the people in their networks are probably a little bit more selective in their posts than what they read about in the media. The third largest frustration cited in the 2010 research was privacy. Because this simple word privacy covered quite a complex bucket of concerns, this time we pushed those citing privacy for more specific reasons. Was it safety? Was it a feeling of intrusiveness? Well, it turns out the bigger deal is safety. And safety concerns, you can clearly see, rise with age. And those are some pretty significant concerns. One final trend marketers need to be aware of is the increasing frustrations that all ages are having with the commercialization of social networks. While complaints about advertising, spam, or commercialization aren't a top dislike for all ages, you can see here that it's a rapidly growing one. And as more businesses use social media to interact with their target markets, we fear that it's likely to get worse. The same growth and frustration levels for the two younger groups are from 2 to 9% in 2013, and they just overlap on the graph. And the greatest has gone from 0 to 6%. Of course, for marketers, the 64,000 question is this channel one we can use for commercial purposes? Is it one we can use for advertising and promotion? So, Erin, what did they tell us about whether or not they wanted to engage with brands?
Well, the way we posed the question was, we said, do you want companies to interact with you on social networks? Would you want to connect with a brand that way, be their follower, friend, or fan? And in 2010, fewer than 15% of our respondents said yes. That's 15%. Fewer than 15% of all ages said, yep, they would like to be your friend, follower, or fan. And another 19% said maybe in 2010. So it really wasn't an overwhelming enthusiasm. And here's how it looks today. Among all ages, 10% say yes, 22% maybe they'd like to be engaged with you on social media, 28% say nope, not really, and 39% say thank you but no thank you, I do not want to be socially media marketed to. That's a big no. So let's break it down by age to see whose attitudes have changed in the last 3 years and how. Here was how our youngest group answered in 2010 and then this year. And they've had 3 more years of brands trying to connect with them on social media, and quite frankly, it seems that they're really not that impressed. In fact, the number who said yes has actually gone down. Here are our leading age boomers. They're then and now. They, again, are not so impressed. We're seeing an increase in the not reallys. We're seeing fewer people in the yes camp. On the other hand, it seems our silent generation are willing to give your brand a chance. We actually saw an increase in the number of people who said yes or maybe, and definitely an increase in the number of people who said not really. So that's a positive. And finally, with our oldest olds, you can see that they also are a little bit more willing to give you a chance and have that social engagement. So this is good news. Now, when we had the survey, we made sure that those people who said yes or maybe, we asked them, well, why? Why would you want to engage with a brand on social media? And they got to explain the benefits that they'd accept. So the first benefit, discounts, coupons, and offers, this was the same that was cited in 2010, but this time, 2 times as many people said they're going for the money. The convenience of the channel, again, was an important benefit. And finally, the idea that it would help you professionally. Again, this is interesting to see how it's matching up with life stages. We keep seeing that group that's really trying to use social for their own career benefits, as perhaps their own offline social networks are diminishing with age.
So now let's take a look at some of the drawbacks, because while there are considerable benefits, as Erin pointed out, we need to think about some of the concerns that people have so that we can determine what's the best strategy and appropriate investment. We noted that personal space is really a concern that people have. 2 times as many people mentioned it than they did in 2010 and feel that there's an intrusive nature when businesses are trying to interact with them. There's the advertising overload, almost 2 times what it was in 2010, and over a third of those 55 to 64 have a certain level of resentment. It's something that they don't like. There's this definite sense of don't call me, I'll call you. So having to approach them in a way that is being understanding and not being in their face. And then the time-consuming nature of it is something that we continue to see.
So how do we kick this into action? How do we apply these insights? Number one, don't be spammy. They don't want us to be salesy in their personal space, so you have to find a way to bring information that highlights what you have to offer without saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. Don't be overly familiar or intrusive. Have that sense of respect. Critical is to make those future benefits clear in your invitation to friend or fan or follow your organization. And then you have to deliver those benefits because people will remember what you promise, and if you don't deliver it, it's incredibly easy to just click that like button and opt out of your messages from then go forward. And also making sure your privacy policies are clear. That safety and security feeling. It can't just be on your website. It also has to be in your social media areas so that you're making it clear how you're going to use this channel with them. So, in other words, you're giving them a strong and relevant set of reasons of why to engage with you socially, and you're addressing their fears as to why they should not engage with you. Because quite frankly, there are a lot of folks out there who feel just like this gentleman does. We asked him if he wanted to engage with even the community where he lives, and he said no, he would not, because he just didn't have the information he wanted to splash all over the world. So for that reason, we want to move from social and really talk about making the most of your website so that you can get the best results from there as well.
All right, thanks, Erin. I think that when we put together this methodology, it included primarily closed-ended questions, which gave us the benefit of being able to quantify the results. But as much as we wanted to minimize the open-ended questions because they're cumbersome to deal with, we just love them because we get to the heart of the issue better than any numbers can sometimes. Here's a common refrain that we heard from Social Silver Surfers about websites. There's a frustration that they're going to the website looking for specific information, and yet they aren't able to find what they want, or they aren't able to find it easily. It's a frustrating experience. So one of the key takeaways was just really about making the user experience something that is enjoyable and easy. We started off by taking a look at the different categories people visited. And if you take a look at this by different life stages, you'll see, or age groups, you'll see how sort of a different life stage influences where we spend time on the web. You can see what content areas are more popular with younger folks. And with all the talk about lifelong learning, note down at the bottom how an interest in education declines with age. It made us wonder if, well, perhaps lifelong learning is being overemphasized for elders. So we also then wanted to see, well, what is popular with older people? After looking at how important research and reference is, elders clearly are interested in lifelong learning. It's something that is very much popular with them. But perhaps they want to do it on their own terms. As Erin said earlier, they're educated, knowledgeable, and curious. Now, the importance of health, medical, and wellness, well, that's not a surprise. But keep in mind that these percentages in the mid to upper 50s, when we look at the next slide. Here you can see how some interests are ageless, and all of them are more important than health, medical, and wellness. Maybe we should ditch the health fairs and have a shopping spree. Compared to 2010, there's been an increase across the board in the number of people of all ages who visit shopping and news sites. Keep in mind 2 trends. The economy has improved significantly since 2010, and the Internet continues to grow in importance as a news source for people. So here are some ideas on how you can apply some of these insights now that we know what content they like. Pay-per-click and search engine buys, well, make sure you're doing them where your targets are. Website and blog content should be driven not by what you want to say, but by what your target market is interested in hearing. For social sharing, now that you know what they like, that gives you an indication of the type of content that they're more likely to be interested in. And event programming that is relevant and compelling, not promotional. So that's some really good insights. Now let's take a look at some functionality.
Okay. Well, remember at the beginning of this webinar, I mentioned to everybody how you can raise your hands to get our attention. I'd like to see if we can use that little feature to get a quick poll here. Raise your hand if you think of these features or tools, the ones most appreciated by website visitors over 75 was text resizing. Go ahead and raise your hands. Got a few hands raised, but not many. Okay. How about for those of you who think it was printer-friendly pages? Okay. See 3 or 4 hands on that one. And finally, those who thought it was Talk Instantly or live chat. We got a smart crowd here today. Well, out of what we found, printer-friendly pages are really the most popular of the website features. And in fact, it wasn't just our folks over 75. It was favorite no matter what your age. Now, this has changed a little bit slightly, this favorite features data, since our 2010 research. At that time, the #1 favored feature was the search tool that was built into the site. And #2 was printer-friendly pages. Easy navigation wasn't even in the top 10. Now, printer-friendly tops the list, search tool is #2, and look at easy navigation. So that's telling us that people are starting to feel like the websites aren't necessarily built with their experience in mind. We also looked at this a little bit by ages. We know for a long time that older adults are voracious for new information. So it wasn't that surprising that links to other sites and information would be popular among our older olds. Text resizing was less of a priority overall for all ages of respondents this time. And one of the things that we found interesting was that women were 2 times as likely as men to like games involved in their websites. So if this is what appeals to our older groups, what's popular with the youngers? Well, it's the sharing. Share with your friend, sharing of any case was more popular with our younger cohorts. It was also more popular with women, people with children under 18 living at home. So that's definitely a trend to keep in mind if you're looking at those groups as your adult children or influencers.
One change that we were a little bit surprised by was that compared to 2010, fewer people in all age groups ranked video as a favorite. Perhaps now that videos are ubiquitous, the novelty's wearing off. When we sliced the data, we did see that caregivers were most likely to appreciate video, and we do see that it's being used a fair amount, but it doesn't quite have that same excitement it did in 2010. Another question we asked was, do you feel like most websites reflect the lifestyles, needs, or values of people your age? Here you can see what the youngest think, and 70% really agree. But when we look at 75 plus, we're down to 22. What was interesting is even the youngest group were less pleased than they were 3 years ago, and the 75 plus the most displeased. We think that people are becoming, their expectations about what they should get from a website are increasing, and they're becoming a little bit less tolerant when they visit them. For those of you who are marketing real estate, we asked some additional questions from people who had moved in the last 2 years. Here are some insights of where you'll get the most bang for your marketing buck. Increased use of directories by both leading-age boomers and the eldest group since 2010, and a decrease in the use of community websites as reported by Silence and eldest groups since 2010. In other words, people are more interested in what other people are saying about you and your competition than what you are saying about yourself. So be sure to note how important search engines are to all ages. The youngest people think that they are almost 7 times as important as your website. And again, for marketing housing, you'll see a diminishing return on your investment the older your target. Note that for all but the 45 to 64 age group, the social media is not as important to people making a moving decision. Compared to 2010, we saw a big decrease in the use of realtor websites reported by our 2 oldest groups. Next, we asked them, what actions do they take on websites? On community sites, the majority of users were looking for that printed information, filling out forms, and use the internet search tool within a site. The fewest people shared information with a friend, as much as we dearly like them to do so, and nor did they really want to like or follow or pin. What's interesting, I want to comment on that, is that a lot of that data is available from your analytics, and you should be checking it. But we wanted to ask the question because we wanted to see for what people perceived to be important to them. One of the statistics that really did not surprise us, but reminded us how important. We asked them, did you reject a community based on a website alone? Here you can see that from 2010, 26% said they had. In 2013, 36% had. People, as I said earlier, are becoming more selective and discriminating and intolerant about websites. You clearly don't want to be driving traffic to your website and have so many people rejecting your community just because of your website. And notice how this quick rejection has grown 38%. We also asked how influential are community sites on decisions to move. In 2010, it averaged 3.5 on a scale of 1 to 7. This year, it increased to 4.2. So they may not be viewing it as much as other sites, but when they do, it is something that they really feel reflects the brand. So Erin, can you share what frustrates people about websites? Erin?
Absolutely. It's not a short list, quite frankly. When we look at what the level of frustration is with websites, it's increased overall in 3 years. And these are some of the things that they expressed were their most sincere frustrations. Requiring a registration in order to get information, people are very used to getting things free and clear and without any sort of barrier. The idea that it was hard to figure out where to go on the site. Again, we talked about the importance of easy navigation. This is the flip side. They're annoyed when they don't have it. Hard to find contact information, the requirement to download application, and the idea that the site is slow. And when we looked at it by age group, 75-plussers had fewest frustrations. But I will tell you that as one 80-plusser told me, she said, I don't expect it to work well. I'm just not that adept. In other words, our visitors are not having a positive experience, but they're blaming themselves rather than the design of the website. One thing that pretty much everybody blames the website for, however, is the following. Yep, it's music that starts automatically, or they can't find the control to turn it off or down. That was hated by over a third of our respondents. And despite this cheeky graphic about if the music's too loud, you're too old, it was actually the 40 to 44-year-olds who really hate that out-of-control music the most. Here's another thing that's very frustrating and that we need to be aware of. It's the inability to find a price that is clearly stated. This was an especially big frustration with our older olds, as you can see by that big, bright orange bar of 75-plussers. 71% of them complained about this. So really something that we can address and that we need to address. Now, our 2010 research didn't ask directly about privacy and security, but so many of our over 40 respondents kept telling us that it was a concern that we actually added a question specifically about privacy and security related to forms in this year's study. And you'll see that of all ages are worried about privacy and security, especially these two groups. So how do we take this input and kick it into action? Well, here are some ways to apply it. Don't make them worry. Put in a really clear, easy to understand privacy policy by any form, by any area where they will think that they're giving information. Don't leave them hanging. Share the information they want and give them links to come deeper and be able to feed their own need for more information. And don't make them work so hard. That clear navigation, again, we saw it as a rise in frustration, and we saw it as a rise in something that they really appreciate. So if we really start from the user experience, we can get a better motivating outcome from our groups. So this was a good example. This was a gentleman I spoke to, and he said, well, you know, websites are assuming that I have a knowledge that I don't have. There's a great gap between me and my grandchildren, 70 years. They grew up in a world that's a different than my world. But that's where the money is. It's not that we don't have the money, he told me. We just don't spend it on those things. Now, I definitely understand what he's saying, and definitely our website designers out there are often catering what they provide to a younger audience. But I will disagree with him about where the money is. As we've seen in our research, online shopping is an ageless activity. And as we've seen in national studies, for example, by Forrester Research, it's actually the older boomers who spend the most online. So it's our prospects, not their grandchildren, who are where the money is.
Now I'd like to invite you to submit your questions. We see a few that have come in, but we've gone over a lot of data. We're sure that there's some more questions out there. I can tell you that we will be continuing to do some analysis. We have some more surveys that have come in since we've taken a look at this initial look. Once we update it, we will be preparing a report for each of our clients with specific recommendations for your situation, as well as giving the partners a report that shows how their community or organization's respondents compared to the overall population. But in terms of questions, happy to answer any questions that you have.
One question that came across the transom was the number of respondents that we had. For each of our 2 surveys, we've received over 400 responses so far. As you saw in the beginning, these are wealthier, more affluent, they're more educated. But we've received over 400 in each.
Somebody else asked, would we be sending out a digital copy? We will be sending out a recording of this presentation, and then once we do our final analysis, we will be publishing an ebook in July, and we'll make that available as well.
In fact, Todd's skipped ahead, and these are our next steps. Were there any other questions, Todd, that you can see? I'm afraid my control panel has disappeared. Technology.
One question that came in said, it seems like you're saying that users aren't as sophisticated as we like to give them credit for.
Oh, they're absolutely not that sophisticated. You know, I really encourage anybody who's looking at their website to spend a little time with the people who actually going to use that website. In 2010, one of the things we did was we actually videotaped users interacting with some representative websites. And even things from just, if you tell them that the domain is mycompany.com, they will type it in. Capital M-Y space capital C-O-M-P-A-N-Y space D-O-T space C-O-M. So you really have to understand. Now, not all of them are unsophisticated. We have a very wide range. So your goal is to provide an experience that has as few barriers to entry and is as accessible as possible so that you can get the most of your visitors moving in the right direction. We actually have video of some of those initial user kind of observations on Creating Results YouTube channel. And I'll be happy to send out a link to that if anybody wants to get kind of a feel for how people are actually interacting with your sites.
And another question came in, did we explore the use of mobile at all in our survey?
We did not explore it directly in this one, and it's going to be, I Todd is going to laugh when I say this because every time I get to this point and I think, oh, I'm so exhausted, but then I say, but the next one, we're going to do this. And two areas which we saw a growing amount of interest and usage was mobile, number one, and also Skype and other long-distance communications tools. Skype was named by a lot of people as a quote-unquote social tool. And so it's really, again, when we're talking about what's driving all of this technology use is not I'm using technology for technology's sake, but rather I'm using technology to connect with the people who are most important to me. We're excited to explore those two things in our next piece of research.
And another question was about social media and networking, and it sounds like we're not overly enthusiastic about it with organizations, not with respondents being concerned about the commercialization and not wanting to be advertised to. So how important is it, and how much should organizations be involved in it?
I think it's absolutely important. I don't want anybody to get the idea that we're not overly enthusiastic about it. Not only do we have a real fondness for social, we're seeing results when it's done right for our clients. It's that kind of delicate dance that you're doing. You're trying to prove the value that your organization brings to the lives of your prospects. And you have to do that in a way that is showing, not telling, that is sharing the stories of people who benefit from what you have to offer, that is sharing ways for them to help themselves. Because this is a group that is intelligent and motivated and very spirited. And so if you can do that, you're going to see some really nice results from your social media.
All right. Well, we invite you to reach out to us or your client services lead if you've got additional questions. As I said earlier, we're still receiving surveys and are going to be doing a final analysis. We'll provide the customized recommendations and customized reports. eBook will come out in July, and we'll be happy to send you a copy. And then we'll be doing some additional webinars that will dig a little bit deeper in August. So with that, I thank you for your time and hope that you found it to be useful, and wish you a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you very much.